This video will provide a structured approach to close the procurement and contract obligation as per PMI guidelines, where it focuses on ensuring that all of the contractual requirements are met, financial settlements are completed, and also procurement audits are conducted effectively. So, procurement and contract closure are essential final step in project management. PMI outlines a structured approach to ensure that all of the financial, legal, and the operational obligations are completed before officially closing the project. By having a proper closure process and the procurement closure process, it prevents the disputes and enhances the vendor relationships and ensure the compliance with the contractual agreements. How to ensure all of the procurement obligations are met? Before finalizing the procurement closure, project teams must ensure that all of the contract obligations has been met, and this includes verifying the deliverables, evaluating the vendor performance, and documenting the closure process. PMI stresses the importance of the through reviews to avoid these future conflicts. The key activities that is involved when um, uh, closing the procurement, including verifying all of the deliverables and services were completed as per the contract. Also ensuring the vendor performance aligns with the contract terms and conditions, as well as confirming all of the legal and financial obligations are satisfied, and finally documenting the procurement outcomes and lessons learned. You might face some of these issues when trying to close the procurement, like the unfulfilled contractual obligations or delays in receiving the final deliverables, or sometimes incomplete documentations and approval. And sometimes also you might face a dispute over the payment terms and service quality. So you need to avoid again falling into these issues by following these activities when closure. How to handle the final payments and settlements? So handling the final payments and settlements requires a close attention to the detail. PMI recommends ensuring that all of the deliverables are received and disputes are resolved and financial audits are conducted before issuing the final payments. And this approach minimizes the financial risks and strengthens the vendor relationships. The final step here to, and let's say the final steps here in confirming the payment and settlements. First, you need to review the outstanding invoices and ensuring the accuracy. Also need to confirm the receipt of all of the deliverables before issuing the final payment to the vendor or the supplier. And in case if there is any pending unresolved financial discrepancies with the vendor, you need to resolve it immediately. Also obtaining the final payment approval and sign off. And the best practices here to have a smooth financial closure is by ensuring the payment milestones were met before the release of the final funds. Also by conducting a final financial audit to verify the contract fulfillment, and also by maintaining a record of all of the transactions for the future references. Let's now move into one of these interesting topics, which having conducting a procurement audit, which we might also have highlighted where at controlling and monitoring project work. This time we'll talk in terms of closing these procurement and closing these contracts. So the procurement audit is a critical step in ensuring all of the contractual obligations were met and all of the procurement processes aligns with the best practices. Team I recommends conducting a structured audits to assess the vendor performance, cost efficiency, and compliance before closing the procurement process. And the purpose of having a procurement audit is, as I mentioned, to assess the contract compliance and vendor performance before closing the contract or uh, um, say the project with the vendor or supplier. Also, to identify the procurement risks and areas for improvement. You also need to ensure the adherence to the financial and legal regulations. And finally, it can help you by capturing the lessons learned for the future procurement processes. And if you wanted to understand what does it include in the procurement audit or let's say document, it's like reviewing all of the procurement documentation and agreements, evaluating the contract execution and deliverables. Also, it can include some analysis of the cost efficiency and financial performance. And finally, you may add, let's say, an identification of the process inefficiencies and risk areas within the procurement and within the relationship and the let's say the vendor or supplier. This is a very important concept before closing the project, which is resolving the open claims and dispute, which you always might be tested at the PMP exam. It will ask you that there's an open claim and for example, the management or the stakeholder is pushing close out the project, but you still have an open claim or open dispute. Remember that the answers to that is that you cannot close the project until unless you resolve all of these open claims and dispute. You cannot close any of these projects. It's not ethical to close any project without resolving all of these open claims or disputes. So remember that at the exam, in case that you have faced any of these questions, remember that the priority here is to close these disputes. So unresolved claims and dispute can significantly delay the procurement close. As PMI recommends a structured approach to the dispute resolution, including, for example, root cause analysis, contract reviews, and negotiation strategies. Also, by documenting the resolution to ensure the clarity and prevents the future issues. And to understand what are these procurement disputes. And the common procurement dispute here includes the disagreements over the deliverables or service quality. Sometimes these procurement dispute is financial dispute related to pricing or payments. We also have some delays on contract fulfillment. And one of these most common type, which is the legal issues related to the contracts interpretation. These are the common procurement disputes that you might face. And these steps here we are gonna talk about, which is to resolve this procurement dispute. You need to start first with identifying the root cause of that dispute by analyzing the source of the dispute. Is it because of this agreement on deliverables? Is it financial on pricing or payment? Is it there is no the deliverable does not meet the quality criteria? Is it legal issues? So you need to understand the root cause of that, let's say, procurement dispute, and then you need to engage the stakeholder as a second step. By engaging the stakeholder and facilitating discussion between these involved parties to listen from each of these parties. The third step here, you need to review the contract terms. After reviewing the contract terms by referring to the, let's say, the contract clauses and the resolution guidelines, based on that, you can move to the next step, which is negotiating a fair settlement. And negotiating a fair settlement here is like working towards a mutually beneficial agreement. Finally, you need to document the resolution and share it with the stakeholders and the vendors or suppliers to ensure all of the agreements are officially recorded, communicated, and to enhance the accountability and responsibility of these, let's say, decisions. Documenting documentation required for procurement closure. So proper documentation is crucial in procurement closure to maintain the transparency and legal compliance. I highlights the importance of having maintaining and accurate records for audits and risk management and organizational learning. The key documents that you need to have when doing procurement closure, including the final contract performance report, the receipts and financial settlements, the procurement audit report sometimes, also the lessons learned from the procurement activities. And here are some of these best practices for documenting the procurement closure by maintaining a centralized repository for the procurement records, also ensuring all of the documents are signed and validated, finally including the key insights for future procurement improvements. When it comes to the contract closeout procedures, so contract closeout process ensures that all of the procurement activities are formally concluded. And the PMI here recommends following a structured approach, including performance reviews, financial settlements, and proper documentation to close out the contract effectively. And these key steps involved when trying to close a contract here is by first, you need to confirm the contract completion by verifying all of the terms that were fulfilled. Next, you need to conduct performance evaluation to assess the vendor performance. After that, you need to finalize the financial settlement to ensure that there is all of the outstanding payments are clear and there's no pending outstandings or bills or payment or disputes. Fourth step here, you need to obtain a formal sign off from all of the parties. Finally, you need to archive the procurement records by storing the documents for the future references. Transitioning the vendors and suppliers post the closure. So, vendor transitions should be handled carefully to maintain the operational. PMI recommends documenting, or PMI recommends documenting the supplier performance, retaining key contracts, and conducting knowledge transfer sessions before closing the vendor contracts. The key considerations in vendor transition is that you need to ensure all of the knowledge transfer is being complete to ensure the ongoing support to your operation. Also managing the suppliers offboarding procedures, as well as evaluating the long-term vendor relationships that could benefit both of the party, you as a project manager, our organization, and the vendor itself. And the best practices to ensure a smoother transition uh, post the project closure is by conducting a formal transition meeting with the vendors to understand their concerns, their lessons learned, to understand in cases that they have any dispute so you can resolve it. And also, one of these best practices is by documenting the final performance evaluation and finally retaining the vendor contacts for the future engagement. And some of these challenges that you might face when trying to close the procurement or contracts. Procurement closure can be complex due to stakeholder dependencies and financial dispute. However, PMI advises proactive planning and structured documentation to ensure a seamless contract closure processes. Some of these common challenges that you might face when trying to close a contract or procurement is the delayed approvals from the key stakeholders. Also, one of these challenges is dispute over final payments and service quality, as well as the incomplete documentation, which might cause compliance risks. And these strategies that I'm gonna mention is a way to overcome these challenges that I just mentioned. To overcome the delayed approval is by establishing a clear closure criteria at the project initiation. And to avoid falling into the dispute over the final payments, you need to have a strategy where you need to engage the legal and financial teams early in the process. Finally, to overcome the incompletion issue is by using a structured checklist to track the closure processes. To summarize our session here on closing the procurement and contracts, we looked at the procurement closure, talked about its importance to ensure all of the contractual obligations are met. We also talked about the final payments and settlements, which must be carefully reviewed, and the procurement audits as one of these tools and techniques to enhance the compliance and the process improvement. We looked at how to resolve these disputes before the closure to prevent any future risks when procuring any, let's say, services or goods by other vendors or suppliers. We also emphasized the importance of having proper documentation to ensure the transparency and the legal security.